How you doing? Good evening tonight. My name is Julius Cephas, and I'm filling in for Norman Oliver, who's on vacation, and I'm president of the union at the Port of Wilmington, 1694-1. Tonight, we have a great guest. You're going to be very surprised. You're going to learn a lot of things. But before I go to our guest tonight, I would like to first, the show's going to be dedicated to the Mabels, Mabel Cephas and Mabel Foster. Mabel Foster is one of my friends, and she lives in Dunleavy. She's a faithful watcher. So I just want to say good evening. Thank you for watching this show tonight. But before I go to our guest, and this is the union's point of view, we having some issues at the Port of Wilmington. A lot of things are going well, but we having some issues with some of the directors. We have HR director, we have the director of operations, and the director of engineering. And we're going to ask the board to look into some serious problems we have down there. Gene Bailey normally protects everybody, but there needs to be an investigation. Tonight, I won't get into that tonight because we have a great guest, but we'll bring that back. We were supposed to talk about that tonight, but we'll bring it back later. But again, the HR director, the director of operations, the director of engineers need to be accountable for the taxpayers and not their own personal problems, I call it. And we're going to ask the legislators to look into it. But again, tonight we're going to talk about, we have the great Congressman John Carney, and I would like to introduce John Carney. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great tonight. How are you?
Good, good.
You mentioned Mabel Cephas and Mabel Foster dedicating the program tonight. Years and years ago, when I worked for the Diocese of Wilmington, I knew of Mabel Cephas because she was well known throughout the community for the great work that she did in those days for the diocese and all the people that she served. So it's a great tribute for me to be on this show that's dedicated to her.
Yeah, well, she grew me well.
She grew you well, right?
Yeah, that's my mother.
That's your mother, I know it is.
Okay, but I would like to ask you, and we're going to be all over the place tonight, but what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now?
Well, it's everybody that I encounter here in Delaware when I'm back here this weekend, and when I come back each day on the train, ask me the same question because it's really pretty crazy in Washington right now. The Republican majority in the House passed a bill before we left on Friday that would we need to fund the government beyond the end of this month. If we don't, then the government will shut down. And the Republicans basically passed something with the connected to the defunding of the Affordable Care Act, health care reform, otherwise known as Obamacare. And of course, the President and the Senate has made it clear that that's unacceptable, obviously. And so basically we'll be facing, once the Senate disposes of that resolution, we could be facing the shutdown of the government, really because the small minority in the House, frankly, of the House Republicans continue to want to roll back the Affordable Care Act and health care reform. They don't have any substitute for it. They don't have any alternative, but they just continue to beat that drum. Frankly, some really good and positive things are happening here in Delaware. Maybe we can get into that later on in the show, but it's really discouraging. When I hear it from Delawareans, most of the times they're expressing sympathy to me that I have to go and work in that environment because we just don't do things like that here in Delaware. We have our differences for sure, we're Republicans and Democrats, but we try to find a way to work together at the end of the day and do the right thing for the people. We've got plenty of challenges. We can talk about many of them tonight facing the country, and we should be focusing on those challenges. We should be focusing on finding ways to pass a budget, short-term or long, to keep the government funded beyond the end of this month instead of threatening to shut the government down.
Do you think the election in 14, where you might have more Democrats or more other folks than Republicans, do you think that might help?
Well, it's hard to say. The elections in 14 are pretty, it's another year away. Right. That's frankly the problem with Washington and the environment in which I work every day is we think too much, we spend too much time thinking about the next election instead of thinking about what we need to do today and tomorrow. for the country. We got plenty. We got still very high unemployment rates in our country. We have people, more people than ever, I think, in our history out of work for 6 months or longer, so-called long-term unemployment, really devastating for people and their families. Hard to get back to work after being out of work for 6 months. We've got a budget deficit and a national debt that continues to grow. We've got the need to implement healthcare reform and bring healthcare costs down, particularly if we're going to address those out-year healthcare costs.
Okay, do you think, what I'm hearing anyway, I know you put a bill in about, Medicaid fraud. How's that going?
Well, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. That's something we should be passing. Right now, we spend as a country about twice as much as the rest of the industrialized world, and we still leave 40-some million people uninsured. Now, the Affordable Care Act will take care of that, but we waste a lot of money in fraud in both Medicare and Medicaid. We have a piece of legislation. We've worked with Senator Carper on it, worked with Republicans in the Senate and the House. We should be passing that bill. We've got elements of organized crime taking people's Social Security, billing against those Social Security numbers falsely to take down money from Medicare in particular. And we ought to stop that. It's estimated to be a $60 billion a year problem.
But if you are the congressman, why can't y'all stop it?
Well, we should be able to pass legislation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we spend time in the House trying to defund. We have voted 40 times now to repeal the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Now we're attaching the funding of the Affordable Care Act to the continuing resolution, meaning we could shut down the government. Instead, we ought to be thinking about ways, if we really cared about health care costs and our deficit and debt, we should be passing legislation that will help address that fraud.
Now, for my mother and folks like my mother, the Social Security, what are y'all doing to preserve Social Security?
Well, we've got to do more. The reality is by the mid-2030s, Social Security, if we don't fix it in some kind of way, they'll have to take a significant reduction in benefits. And so we've got to come up with a way to develop a different formula. Right now, as you probably know, the age at which people can take Social Security is increasing. Historically, it's been 65. You could retire early in some cases for a different amount at 62. But that age is going up. So when I retire, I'm 57 now, I can retire at 66 and 4 months. So that's something that's already baked into the system as a result of the changes that were made in the 80s. We have to do another recalibration like that, whatever it is. Maybe raise the cap on income that's taxed for it, but we should put together a bipartisan group to take a look at it and come up with some recommendations.
Okay. As a freshman, you were the youngest Democrat to get a major bill passed as a freshman in the 112th Congress. Okay, it's Make It in America. Can you explain what Make It in America means?
Well, there was a whole range of components for the Make It in America agenda. Our particular bill that I sponsor with a guy by the name of Steve Fincher, who's a Republican from Tennessee. In fact, he and I are working on a piece of legislation right now to reform housing finance in our country. We wanted to encourage more companies to take their business public, because by doing so, it's known that you create a lot of jobs that way. What's happened over the last 10 years or so, the number of emerging growth companies going to the markets to go public has gone down for lots of different reasons. And as a result, those emerging growth companies aren't creating the kind of jobs that we could. So this bill would make some changes, make it easier to go public. Already we're seeing positive benefits from that. It's an example of how Democrats and Republicans, if you start thinking about how you solve these problems, can actually do it if we work together.
Okay. And what about the Jobs Act?
Yeah, that was the Jobs Act. Our piece was one component of that. There were several pieces of that. was really the only jobs legislation that passed in the last Congress, mainly because, as I said, the Republicans in Congress were mostly focused on such things as repealing the Affordable Care Act, as opposed to addressing the proposal that the president made. President Obama proposed a series of things to help create jobs, including an infrastructure spending program, which we should do. We've not been able to pass that. That will put people to work right away. There are lots of things that we could do if we could just find a way to work together.
Now, I know you, at the port, you was involved in the Renewable Energy Act with the windmills. And I know we was doing the windmills at the Port of Wilmington. Can you talk about the windmills?
Well, you know, the offshore wind was, we felt, a real opportunity for Delaware and places across the country to create jobs in a whole new industry with energy created by wind off the coast. The problem with that is, or the challenge now, is that the natural gas prices have gone down so low as a result of the availability of natural gas reserves in Pennsylvania and New York and Ohio that made available by fracking techniques, that it's hasn't been as competitive. So the project off Delaware never got off the ground. I still believe that there's an opportunity there, not just to generate clean energy, but to create jobs in the development of in the construction of the wind towers, the turbines, the installation of the projects. But to date, there's been no project that's gotten off the ground, mainly because of the cheaper energy. If you look even in Delaware, all the coal-fired plants have all converted to natural gas because it's a lot cheaper, and of course it's also a lot cleaner as well.
Okay, well, you know, I got to get to the Port of Wilmington, and when I believe you was working with the governor, Carper, at the time, when the city owned the port,
Yeah.
and you was a big part of when the city sold to the state.
Right.
And let me say, like my mom would say, praise the Lord that you support the port, because we've been through hell and back, and I believe your name now, John Carney, is a lot better now than it's ever been. And I'll leave it like that, but talk about that.
Well, you know, one of the biggest challenges that we face as a country, in my opinion, is to find ways to create those jobs that don't require an advanced degree, that don't require, you know, an engineering degree, that folks who want to go to work hard, put in a good day's work, and make a living to support a middle-class lifestyle. Fewer and fewer of those jobs around today. Lots of them, thousands of them, millions of them have moved to Mexico and offshore. That's why the jobs at the Port of Wilmington are so important. And that's why Governor Carper at the time and the mayor at the time, we felt like it was important for the state to purchase the port so that investments could be made in the infrastructure there to help keep the jobs that are there and potentially to create more. And we've seen tremendous development at the port over the years. That was in the mid-90s, but there's so much more to do, as you know. And that's what all the discussion is about down around the port these days. In order for the port to continue to be strong and compete, they've got to be able to compete for the cargo that's going to be coming up the river in the future.
Right. I believe, me personally, if the port is embraced, I think we would do fine. The tagger.
Well, I think there's a general appreciation and understanding about how important the port is.
Okay.
And when you say embraced, for me, embrace means, you know, invest resources in it. We've had a difficult time in this state over the last couple of years, and that's why it's been difficult. But we've got to look, those kinds of jobs. We lost the General Motors plant at Boxwood Road. We lost the Chrysler plant in Newark. Those are several thousand jobs each that are the kinds of jobs that I'm talking about that we need to have more on, and they're going to be very competitive here in the U.S. and around the world for those kinds of jobs.
I understand that, and that's why I cannot say enough about Senator Marshall, Senate Bill 3. People just don't know what could have happened. But you played a big part in Tagger 5 to get the grant. Can you explain what Tagger 5
Well,
is for the grant for Tagger 5?
we were just delighted to announce just a week or so ago the approval of the Tiger grant, which is a federal grant. We had been unsuccessful prior to that,
right,
to get funding to make really needed capital investments of the port. Obviously, the state has to match those funds, and my understanding is that won't be any problem. It's a big deal. It's $10+ million, I think $12 million overall, and there are lots of infrastructure needs out there, as you know, that those funds are going to address. So we've got to do that, and we've got to find ways to make investments to get more terminals out on the river. I believe that strongly, particularly as the Panama Canal expands and the bigger ships start coming up the Delaware River and Bay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and we've got competition, as you know. We've got competition on the river. The reason the Port of Wilmington's been so successful, and you know this, is because our workforce is so much better than the ports around the region, and we've got to keep it that way. And that's where you come in as a leader of the longshoremen, one of the locals out there. Your guys have to continue to be the best on the river, and that's how we're going to be able to continue to have the customers that we do.
I like to say again, through the years, you have always supported us, and we feel good about it. And people just don't understand how serious this is. And again, talk about what's some of the things you're trying to do now to improve Delaware.
Well, the work that I do for Delaware every day when I go to Washington, I try to think, how can the work that I'm doing there impact our state in a positive direction? Mm-hmm. Again, I think the biggest challenge that we face as a country is to create opportunities for people that are trying to get into the middle class, and those that are in the middle class to hang on. And the only way you can do that is with good paying jobs. And frankly, we just don't have enough of those. So what keeps me up at night is, what are we going to do? What can we do as a country to make America a better place to do business than some of these places around the world that have been beating us for some of these jobs? I have a really strong belief that U.S. manufacturing has to come back, and it is coming back. And there are lots of reasons for that. One is cheaper energy. With these cheaper natural gas prices, companies are finding more efficient ways to produce products. From General Electric to Apple, Walmart now has made a commitment to source so much of their products here in the U.S. I'm co-sponsoring a bill with my colleague from up in Pennsylvania, Mike Fitzpatrick, called America Star program. You know, when I go out this summer, I had my air conditioner broke. Mm-hmm. So I had to go out looking for an air conditioner. First thing I said to the guy was, tell me the ones that are made here in the U.S. So he said, I got a good one for you. Sometimes it's hard to do that. I was going, when they switched over to the HD TV, what was that, a year or two ago? Sometime I had to go out looking for a TV. I wanted to buy American-made TV. You can hardly find one made in the U.S. right now. So our bill would let consumers know whether the product is made here in the U.S., how much of the product might be. Some products are made overseas and assembled here, or the components come from overseas and they're assembled here. There was a big article last week in one of the papers about textile manufacturing, which is coming back to the Carolinas. Okay. You know, most of those jobs left, 30, 40, 50,000 jobs 20 years ago, and some of them are coming back. Not as many, for sure, but we've got to find ways, and what I try to think about every day when I get on that train is, what can I do to help America be more competitive so that we can bring manufacturing back in our country.
Now, one thing about you, you've always been a healthy person, and you dealt with the wellness, fitness, and now you're dealing with,
I'm dealing with old age right now.
Nah, but you basically are a physical health guru. And talk about Be Healthy Delaware. And the crazy part, y'all, this man is sitting up here with a six-pack. Only time I can get a six-pack when I go to the liquor store. So, but just talk about being healthy in Delaware and some of your programs.
Well, you know, again, it goes to me. I try to keep all these things connected. We talk about our budget situation here in the U.S. and deficit and debt, and the reality of that is that if we're gonna get our budget back in order, we're gonna bring our debt down in the long term, we've got to address healthcare costs. And one of the ways to do that is to help people, get people to take care of themselves, eat a healthier diet, get regular physical activity. You don't have to go to the Y 3 or 4 times a week like I do. Just go out, walk 30 minutes briskly, you know, eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. We got lots of campaigns. Be Healthy Delaware. We started when I was lieutenant governor. Now they've set up shop at Delaware State University, really doing some great stuff, trying to get the word out to people to take care of themselves.
Okay. Now you also, people don't know, you started basically the AAA rating, bond rating. You was one of the first. Explain, and that's an honor, that's a good honor. Explain to the viewing audience what's AAA bond rating.
Well, when states and counties and businesses, when they go out to borrow money to do the things they have to do. For instance, the state of Delaware builds schools and motor vehicle facilities and correctional institutions and you know, the state hospital grounds, buildings there. When we build buildings like that, we borrow money to do it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You wouldn't buy, you would if you had the money, but you don't go out and pay cash for a house. You get a mortgage and you pay it out over time. Well, when the governments do that, they get a rating from the rating agencies that is a measure of how well how strong the economy is in a state, a county, a city, and how well managed the finances are. And so Delaware, since the mid to late 70s, when we had really a very challenging time economically and from the point of view of managing our finances, has gotten better and better and better over those years. When I was Secretary of Finance working for Governor Carper, we were AA+, which is the second highest rating that you could have, and the governor wanted really badly to get that AAA rating, and we were able to get it right around 2000, I think it was. Okay. And the state, through the administrations of Governor Minner and now Governor Markell, have been able to keep that AAA bond rating. What it means is we get a better rating, we get a lower interest rate, so it saves taxpayers money in the long run. And it's an indication for the taxpayer that their tax dollars are being well managed.
What we're going to do, we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to finish talking to United States Congressman John Carney. So. Okay, we're back. We're going to go to the phones, but I want to ask the congressman a couple more questions, and then we're going to start taking your phone calls. That most people don't know, or some of them do know, that you were first thing you was a quarterback. In 1973, you won the state championship with St. Mark's. Tell us how football and you win the state championship got you into the politics, and what did you learn on the field to be successful in politics?
I'm glad you brought that up. It's 40 years.
Okay.
Hard to believe. 40 years this fall. But that team, it was a group of guys that worked hard together over really a 4-year period of time. You know, we started St. Mark's, which is the high school that I went to, and we won the championship. It was a brand new school when we started in 1970. And we were able to put together a team, really good players. And, you know, really it taught, I think, the two most important things were if you're going to be successful in anything, you got to work hard and you got to be dedicated to it. And the second thing is you can't do it alone. You've got to do it with, everybody's got to pick the other players on the team up. It's really a team kind of a game. And we developed that. We developed a chemistry that was pretty amazing, and frankly, I've not really experienced it quite that way since then. We had that for a moment, but it was that teamwork, it was that commitment and the willingness to work hard. I try to take that every day since then, in everything I've done, and now serving the people of our state, the willingness to work hard and try to work together. I was the quarterback of that team, so that meant it was my responsibility to kind of lead at least the offensive side of the team and bring people together. And so it helped teach me that, which is part of the work that I do now. I'm hoping that our team will get a chance to get together. We're trying to pull that together later on this fall to celebrate 40 years. We do keep in touch, many of us, and have over the years. I see a lot of those players. It was a special time for us, and it always brings back fond memories.
I met you back in when you was running for lieutenant governor, and again, he's a great man, and believe me, just keep doing what you're doing. And when I met you, and like I said again, he's definitely supported labor. He's definitely supported the Port of Wilmington. I mean, union and non-union. And the congressman is a great man. And we have to remember the people who take care of us, we need to take care of them. And we're going to take phone calls. If you could put the number up so we can start taking some phone calls. Okay, he's going to put the number up so we'll start taking some calls. Now, another thing. As far as, do you see any job possibilities in the city that y'all looking at?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I continue to believe, you know, the port has got to be an area, and the area surrounding the port. Mm-hmm. You know, I happen to be a strong believer, I think, as many of us are, that you got to have strong neighborhoods. I live in the city over by Warner School, and
hello.
Yes, sir. Mr. Cephas.
Yes.
I want to say hello to the congressman there. I know that he's been doing a good work. Now, all the Republicans ain't bad, Congressman. This is Cal Brown.
I knew it was my favorite Republican.
Yeah, but I wanted to say that you alluded to it a little earlier, and it does trouble me. We got a large segment of our population, especially in the minority community, who are, like you said, not technical workers, but have worked hard all their life. The ones that worked at General Motors, Chrysler, a lot of them at the port, at the refinery. Now, a lot of those jobs have gone away, and I hate to say it, and never to come back. Is it a program, and I'm concerned that the president haven't signed on to the pipeline bill that I think would bring a lot of high-paying labor jobs back in this region. Can you kind of help me with that? Or what do these people think? What's the future like for them? These 50 and 60 years old, going back to school is not really a great option for an older man like myself. Where do we fit in America? I'll hang up and listen.
All right. Okay, Calvin. That was the shortest I've ever seen you do, Cal.
Yeah, and Calvin is right. I mean, these jobs that have been the backbone of our middle class for, you know, all the years that I grew up and really for the last half century, We've lost so many of them, and we've got to pull them back. He mentioned the Keystone Pipeline. You know, the issue with the pipeline is that the members of our side of the House, of the Congress, you know, want to push through an approval without going through some of the environmental assessments. I'll be the first one to admit that sometimes those assessments take too long. They ought to put some kind of time frame limit on it if that's the case. I don't think the president has come out and said categorically he's not supportive, but there are segments of the route through Nebraska, I think in particular, that needed to be worked out with the local communities. And ultimately, I think that it'll be approved, but it ought to be done in a way that where you're not given this false choice between the project or you know, protecting the environment. I happen to believe that domestic energy costs going down is going to be the reason that we'll have an opportunity to be more competitive with some of the jobs that Calvin was talking about. Now, some of our neighbors and people that I serve who are, you know, older than I am, into their 60s, Calvin's right. It gets more difficult, obviously, to get trained. The new jobs that are going to be part of American manufacturing require technical skills to run computers, to run machines. You go into a plant now. I was in the General Electric plant down in Newark not that long ago, and I went in there and there wasn't anybody there, you know. Big machines, there's a guy over there underneath a little hood running a computer. And so we've got to make sure that our young people all across the board are able to have those technical skills. Some of those folks, I was just up at the Boeing plant there in Ridley Park. There are about 800 Delawareans who work up there in Ridley Park. We work hard with Pat Meehan, another good Republican like Calvin, to make sure that they have contracts there to keep that employment there. It's a regional thing. Right. It's not just Delaware. We got a lot of Delawareans who go over the line to Pennsylvania. We got a lot of Pennsylvanians coming into Delaware to go to work.
Where are we at as far as blue collar jobs with Amtrak? Because back I worked in Amtrak in 1980.
It's another.
And they was doing some hiring for a minute. Like last few years, they were doing some hiring.
We've had some great successes with our shops in Amtrak. That's why the delegation before I joined it was so supportive of funding to develop high-speed rail and to make those rail cars here in Delaware. Great opportunity for blue-collar jobs here in our state, and we continue to fight for them.
Yeah, because again, Amtrak definitely was a good job, and again, these are the type of jobs that we need. But what I'm asking for at the Port of Wilmington, I'm trying to partner up with Del Tech, University of Delaware, and Delaware State, and I think that's more jobs with the training, because we need a lot of training.
We do, and I'll tell you, we're very fortunate in our state to have 3 institutions, public institutions, like Delaware State, the University of Delaware, and Delaware Tech. Good leadership at each of those institutions. They're fundamental for the future development of our economy, not just in terms of training workers, and making sure we have the expertise, generating innovation with research and students and professors working together. We've got collaborations with Delaware State, University of Delaware in particular, and Delaware Tech as well. Wesley College is part of that too, with federal funds that we've been able to attract to our state to help these researchers develop ideas that can then be commercialized. That part of it, that next step is something that we've got to do a better job here in Delaware, commercializing good ideas, research ideas coming out of our higher education.
No.
And the other thing that's really important, and I spent the whole summer focusing on it, is at a time when higher education is more important than ever, because the skill levels that people need to be competitive today is higher than ever before, much higher than when we were coming out of school. The cost of higher education is more expensive than ever. It's less affordable than it's ever been. We've got kids coming out with $20, $30, $40, $50,000 worth of debt. Well, guess what? If they're paying off that debt, they're not able to buy that first home. They're not able to buy a car, and so that prevents them from generating additional economic activity with their spending, because they're spending so much money paying back their debt. We've heard from families, from parents, from students, from administrators at University of Delaware, Del Tech, and Delaware State. Delaware State in particular, they're a university that whose students are the first student in their families to go to college, and so they get themselves often in financial difficulties because they have to take on such a high amount of debt in order to get through. We've got to find a better way to do it. We've got to keep those costs down, and we've got to find affordable ways for students and families to fund those costs.
How do we do that? Because I see a lot of students who are very talented, but then can't get into college because they can't afford it.
Well, I think the thing that the state just announced a week or two, over the last 2 weeks, where there are a whole number of students that are identified by the fact that they've taken the college boards, but they don't apply to school. And so they've made it, they're in the process of creating an alliance with those schools.
Hello, go ahead, you on the air.
Hey, Julius, since the Honorable Republican Calvin Brown called and nobody else is calling you, I'll give you a call to balance it out with another good Democrat.
There we go.
Thank
you, Herman.
John Carney, how are you, sir? Two things, Congressman. One, want to commend you, first of all, for going in as a freshman and hitting the ground running, reaching across party lines, which is needed to be able to help really kind of get things moving and keep things moving. And it's unfortunate that it's not that much of that really going on in the Congress and the House of Representatives today, particularly with the important piece of legislation that you have before you. And I just pray that hopefully we're going to turn the corner around on that somewhere along the way here. Because it gets too political every time we start hitting into an election, and even going back to the re-election of President Obama and one-term president and all that kind of nonsense, and here we are. But one, I want to commend you for having done it. I happened to see you on, I think it was National News, CNN or something, as you and a Republican colleague were talking about that. So again, I commend you for that. And secondly, if in fact Secretary Clinton does decide to run for president, and if in fact our favorite son, our Vice President Joe Biden, does not run, and if in fact Joe then feels if he supports her and she should win and serve 2 terms out, it would kind of take Joe out the picture, because he would probably be up in age and would not want to meet that challenge of running for president. Would you therefore then represent us from the little old state of Delaware as a presidential candidate? You're looking very presidential there. Would you represent us and maybe get on the ticket to represent Delaware? I'm going to hang up to you and give a listen.
All right. Thank you, Herman. Thank you.
Thanks for your call, Herman. That's the funniest thing that I've heard in quite a while. But I do, I think our Vice President has done an extraordinary job, in the way he has with people, and the way he led for 30-some years as our United States Senator. He's done as Vice President. I think he's complimented the President well. I think he would make a good president. He is running at this stage, or he's made it clear that he has that interest. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But he has served our country extraordinarily well. And no, there is no chance that I'll be running for
you on the air.
that kind of office.
Good evening. I would like to ask our Congress representative a question about how we can provide opportunities for young people, first of all, to learn a little more about the process as it is related to education and bringing ideas to Congress about how to support different education initiatives here in our state. And is there a platform where young people can come down and maybe learn how to, I guess, not really be lobbyists, but to sit in and maybe have a voice? And the reason why I ask this is that I have a 12-year-old daughter that's about to receive a national award for an education initiative that was identified in another state. And she has tried to, get this information out here in Delaware, but it's been very difficult. And this state is actually going to recognize her, but I would love for her to share this idea here locally first, and then in another state. My name is Stacy Henry, and my daughter's program is 100 in Reading. But I'm looking for a platform where she can, share here, like, through some type of,
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, there.
I'm asking.
Yeah, Stacy,
Okay.
there are lots of
Thank
opportunities.
you.
Thanks for the call, and thank you for helping your daughter do what she's doing. There are tremendous opportunities for her to take her idea to Washington. I would encourage you and her to call our office, 691-7333, and we'll try to connect you with the right people. I have people that come to visit me in Washington all the time, with ideas, with complaints, with concerns. People that come to my office here on King Street
Hold on for a second. Go ahead.
on King Street, 233 King. We love to hear all the ideas. We have a Facebook page and a website that people connect with all the time, and frankly, we almost have an ongoing conversation with a lot of people through Facebook.
Okay. Go ahead. You on the air.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Cephas, and good afternoon, Congressman.
How you doing?
How are you?
You've been a staunch supporter of unions and the city, and I'd like to personally thank you for that. The reason I'm calling is twofold. First, I'm a member of one of the local unions, 842, and we seem to be having some issues with our transportation system as far as the hours that it runs, not being able to meet the needs of the general public. I'd like to know your position on that. The second thing that I'd like to know your position on is increased violence on our buses and in our city. And the third thing, so I can get off and someone else can talk, is do you have any suggestions or ideas that we might be able to adopt to get the youth, the young kids in Wilmington, the ability to work some summer jobs, to get them off of the streets and doing something positive, if it's working or in some type of labs, learning different things with some of the other corporations and businesses, and some of the union jobs, so that they can learn rather than to create havoc through the city. I'll get off and listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've hit a number of really, really important issues, and I'll just comment on the last one first, because I think, first of all, I live in the city on 19th Street and have for nearly 30 years now, and I love the city. But it breaks my heart to see the violence that plagues neighborhoods in our city, to see the havoc that's wreaked on our streets, basically by young people involved in the drug business on corners and places. We've got to find a way to keep kids out of that, basically, and to keep them active. And you mentioned the summer jobs. Nothing more important, in my opinion, than keeping young people, particularly in the city, occupied during the summertime, whether it's recreational activities, job opportunities. I mean, we've got to prepare our young people to go to work, and if they don't have a chance to get a job, they don't have transportation. You mentioned transportation at the outset of your call. Then we're going to see what we continue to see now, which is this kind of violence on the streets.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, you on the air.
Hello?
You on the air?
Thanks. How you doing tonight, Julius and Congressman?
Good.
Okay,
I'm
good.
really concerned about calling after Cal and Herman, and I really didn't know about following Herman. Carney for president. That's a good one.
It's a good joke.
It's not a joke, but I do want to call. I did want to call Congressman and join those others that wanted to commend you for the tremendous work that you do in representing all of Delaware. And I've always been impressed by your balanced approach, Congressman, in recognizing that there are a lot of different constituencies and a lot of different communities in the state, and how hard you work to represent all of them. So I want to commend you for that.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me because I try to do that.
And I think you're successful with that. But one of the things I did want to ask you about, Congressman, and Julius knows this affordable care thing is near and dear to my heart. And I guess I've been a little bit concerned lately that, while the Republicans are beating up the Affordable Care Act and threatening to cut that, close up the country so that 50 million Americans don't have insurance, is just unconscionable to me. And it also concerns me that sometimes we don't hear enough about who this Affordable Care Act is actually going to serve. Certainly, lower income people in our community are going to be served, but most of the people that are going to be served by the Affordable Care Act are middle income, middle class Americans. Many of them own their own businesses or just work somewhere where you don't have an employer that provides insurance, and it's going to be a big relief to a lot of families. And I just wish that that we would hear a lot more about even the positive stuff that is already going on with the Affordable Care Act. So I'm gonna hang up and let you respond to that if you would.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary.
A couple things. You couldn't be more right about the Affordable Care Act. First of all, it's very discouraging that we vote to repeal it 40 times without an alternative. It's one thing if there was an alternative vision out there, but you're right. The Affordable Care Act is going to help basically people that are small business people or individuals trying to get health insurance on their own, get a better price, and the most important thing, in my opinion, about it is there's going to be help available for folks with lower to moderate incomes, so it'll make those premiums more affordable. To me, that's the most important thing. But I think that, in addition to the things that are part of the Affordable Care Act that will help us keep our health care costs down.
All right, go ahead. You on the air?
Hi,
How you
Jim
doing?
Gilliam speaking. I'm interested in knowing, has anyone given any thought to reactivating programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps?
We actually have. There has. Jim, it's great to hear your voice, and thank you for calling in. Haven't seen you in a while, and my heart leaps to hear your voice on the phone, particularly as somebody who, through your public service, coordinated a lot of programs that made a difference in people's lives. There is discussion about that, Jim. Most of the discussion is more around trying to get funding for infrastructure projects as opposed to creating a corps of workers that would actually do those infrastructure projects. What's interesting, as I travel around our state, particularly if you go downstate in some of the rural areas, you see a lot of the waterways and drainage ways that were built by those Conservation Corps workers back in the 40s and 50s.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. You like any closing remarks, Congressman?
Yeah, the calls that we got tonight, frankly, were right on the mark in terms of what Congress should be focusing on. Everybody that I talk to in my state, Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. They're concerned about the future of our economy. Where are the jobs going to be for themselves, their kids, and their grandkids to be able to support a middle-class lifestyle? How are people who aren't there going to get on that rung and move up into the middle class? These are the things that we should be spending our time and energy on in Washington, and not threatening to shut down the government so that we can defund the Affordable Care Act. We need to make the healthcare reform work so that people can get coverage, they can be healthier, and we can reduce our costs.
We have one more call. How much? 2 minutes. We're gonna take this last call. Go ahead. We'll take this last call. Go ahead. You're the last caller.
I'm the last caller.
Yes, you are. You hit the lottery.
This is Angel Spicer.
Okay. How you doing?
From the port.
Okay.
How you doing?
All right. Doing great. You got what? You got 30 seconds.
You said,
Turn your TV down.
it is down. It's down.
Okay.
It's turned down.
Okay.
So I was
What's the-
just talking about, the community is real bad out here. The community is bad out here. People getting shot up and that. I live on a bad community. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Do you have a question for the congressman?
Yeah. So what are y'all trying to do to, stop this?
Okay, I'll let him talk. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, we have met, frankly, with the federal authorities that are working with the city of Wilmington. It's got to be an all hands on deck. Obviously, we're running out of time, but it's got to be an all hands on deck effort with law enforcement, with state and local support, with education, with activities for kids. It can't just be. It can't be just a law enforcement thing. It can't be just an educational thing. It's got to be all working together.
Well, I'd like to say first thing, thank you,
Thanks,
Congressman.
Julius.
And
To Mabel Cephas.
and to my mom, to both Mabel tonight.
To both
Shows
Mabel.
dedicated to you. But again, Congressman, it's our pleasure. And I want to make sure everybody come out next year to vote for Congressman John Carney. He's been there for us, and it's time for we be there for him, and to continue to keep doing the great work, because he's not finished, and we need him dearly. And again, and thank God that you support the port the way you do. And again, the port is having a party December the 7th, and make sure you get out and come to the party. My nephew, Priest Tyre, is having a play on the 19th and the 20th of October. The 19th and 20th of October is on the air now. But again, I want to thank you, John, Congressman, and anything we can do, we will be there for you.
Thanks, Julius.
Like you've always been there
Great
for us.
to be here.
And thank you, everybody. And Norman, thank you for letting me fill in while you're on vacation. Thank you again. Good night.